Hey everyone, I'm Kel, and today we have another Force of Will deck tech video. Today we are doing a Rezzard deck from Alice Origin 3 featuring my favorite card from the set, Reiya, as you can see here. Let's get her without the glint, without the glare. She is fantastic, my absolute favorite card of Alice Origin 3, and Rezzard really makes good use of her. She's one of the best cards of the set in my opinion. So yeah, without further ado, let's get on with it.
And before we get started, I do want to give a hearty shout out to Happy Little Hug Factory. Those folks are awesome. If you are looking to pick up Force of Will singles or sealed product, check them out. They are excellent. They have excellent pricing on singles and sealed product. They have pre-orders for Alice Origin 4 up on their website. They did have pre-release kits. I don't know if they're still there. They might all be sold out, but they had pre-release kits for an excellent price. I did pick one up myself for the channel. I'll probably actually be giving away one of the playmats for the pre-release kit that I open up, but I digress. Check out Happy Little Hug Factory. I do have an affiliate link in the description down below. Using that affiliate link helps support me directly, so I greatly appreciate it. And you're picking up excellent Force of Will cards at an excellent price. So without further ado, let's start talking about our really sweet Rezzard deck. This is my favorite ruler from Alice Origin 3. I like Rezzard a lot. I like the color combination too. I always love darkness and wind. So let's start talking about Rezzard himself. I do also want to note before we begin that this is mostly an Alice Origin cluster only deck. There are a couple cards in here from the new Valhalla cluster. You don't really need them. And also at the end, I'm going to go over some options you can do to like tweak the deck and play it kind of how you see fit. But enough of that. Let's start talking about Rezzard again. So Rezzard is a ruler human. He's a darkness and a wind ruler. Basically every card in this deck is going to be darkness at least. There are no wind only cards in my version of the deck. He has the Stranger 10 mechanic, which is, you start the game with a Stranger deck consisting of 10 cards. No more than 2 copies of any one card can go in that deck. He's a Judgment of a wind and double darkness. He has Energize of a wind or a darkness. And he says, whenever a Darkness Regalia enters the battlefield under your control, choose 1. If it's Deathscythe, choose up to 2 instead. You can choose 2 cards from your Stranger deck at random and put them into your graveyard, which is very, very important. Or each player banishes a Resonator, or put a Resonator from your graveyard into your hand, or you may pay 0 to do Judgment until end of turn. We almost never do the one where you put the Resonator from your graveyard into your hand. We almost always do the Stranger deck into the graveyard, or banish, or the free Judgment. The ability to put the Resonators from your Stranger deck directly into the graveyard is actually very, very, very good for the deck. Here is Rezzard's J Ruler side. He is a 1000/1000 7 Kings vampire. He has an enter ability of put the top 4 cards of your deck into your graveyard. Then you may put a Resonator from your graveyard into the field. If you do, it becomes a darkness and also becomes a vampire, which is pretty sweet. So you can put any of the Resonators from your graveyard into the field. And his God's art is Blood Revolution. For each vampire you control, and starting from the one with the highest attack to the one with the lowest attack, target a Resonator your opponent controls. Vampires you control gain +400/+400 until end of turn. Then each of them deals damage equal to its attack to its chosen target. You may choose the same target multiple times with different vampires. Very interesting effect. It's kind of complicated, but basically you choose a bunch of your vampires, you choose your opponent's targets, your vampires get buffed up, and then they smack them. So it's a pretty good way to kill your opponent's Resonators if you have a lot of vampires. We're not running a ton of vampires in the deck, to be completely honest, but, it's there if you need to do it. We really want to be focusing on his first ability here. This is a Reanimator style deck. We want to put dudes into our graveyard and then reanimate them with different effects, and we don't mind sacrificing what we have in order to get things back. So let's talk about the Stranger deck, because it is very important, because we want to put these directly into our graveyard and then reanimate them. First up, we have Laurier, the Twilight Witch. I love this card. She's a 400/400 for double darkness, Resonator Stranger Witch. Enter, remove target Resonator from the game. It doesn't just destroy it, it removes it. And then this card gets +X, +Y, and all abilities of the Resonator removed by this card, where X is the attack and Y is the defense of that Resonator. Excellent card. Super, super good removal. We're running 2 Lauriers because they are so good. Next up is Jabberwock, the Chaotic Disaster. This card is actually crazy. It's an 800/800 for a wind, a darkness, and one of any Resonator Stranger magical beast, and he has this giant essay down here, and I think it's easier to honestly read from this version. So let's see what he exactly does. It says, enter, choose one. Your opponent reveals the top card of their deck. They reveal their hand and discard all cards with the same total cost as the revealed card. Or your opponent reveals the top card of their deck. Destroy all non-Magic Stone, non-J-Rule entities with total cost of the revealed card. Or your opponent reveals the top card of their deck. Each player reveals their hand and discards all cards with the same total cost as a revealed card. Then each player destroys all non-Magic Stone, non-J-Ruler entities they control with the same total cost of the card. So basically you get to choose. Your opponent will always reveal the top card of their deck, and then they either discard all the cards in their hand with the same total cost, they sacrifice all the stuff they have on the field, non-J-Ruler, non-Magic Stone entities with the same total cost, or both of them. But if you choose both of them, it also happens to you. It's a pretty crazy card, but I think it's actually a lot of fun and definitely worth trying out in the deck. It's just so much fun. Next up, we have Faust, the Promising Warrior. This card is actually insane. It is a 1400 for double wind, double darkness, and one of any Resonator Stranger Warrior with Bane and Drain. He's got that Bane Drain. You can pay a darkness and put a promise counter on target Resonator you control. Play this ability only if this card is in your graveyard. So we really want to put him into our graveyard. And he says, whenever a Resonator with a promise counter on it is put into a graveyard from the field, put this card from your graveyard into the field. So you can kind of cheat him out by putting promise counters on your dude. So basically, we want to put a promise counter on one of the Resonators that we are going to sacrifice or banish, and then he just comes right back into play. You can have some really, really big turns where you banish the Resonator, you put the promise counter on in order to reanimate something else using a card effect, and then he will also join in the fray by, you know, triggering his second ability. We are running 2 Faust because he is a house. Next up is Black Wizard, probably one of the best strangers in this deck. This card is actually absurd. It's a 600 for a single darkness Resonator Stranger Wizard with Bane. That doesn't really matter because it says 0, produce 1 darkness, place ability only during your turn, only once per turn, and only if this card is in your graveyard. So we really want to get this into our graveyard, and then we just get free will every single turn. We are running 2 of them, and if you have 2 of them in your graveyard, they each kind of trigger separately, so you can get an additional 2 will per turn. Very good. And then finally we have Shade. This is a classic. 600 for a darkness and one of any Resonator Stranger Spirit with Bane. Enter, your opponent banishes a Resonator. When this card is put into the graveyard from the field, your opponent banishes a Resonator. We're running 2 of these. It's just really good. You know, when it comes into play, your opponent banishes a Resonator, and then you can, you know, sacrifice this to another card effect, you know, banish this card, and then your opponent also has to banish it. So it's kind of like a good old 2-for-1. And if you can keep recurring this with other cards, you can get the value train going. Shade is a really good inclusion into the deck. Next up, we have the Magic Stones, and it is very, very simple. We are running 4 of the Magic Stone of Black Silence because, of course, we are a Darkness and Wind deck. We are running 4 of the Ataractia's Memoria because, of course, this card is really good. And we are running 2 of the Darkness Magic Stones and no Wind Stones because every single card in our deck is Darkness. We don't have a single Wind-only card. If you choose to run some of the Wind-only cards, you might want to choose to put a, you know, Wind Stone in replace of one of these, but double darkness is where it's at for our build. So let's talk about Rezzard's Regalia Deathscythe. This is a really sweet one. So it's a Regalia. It has Mythic, which means you can only have 1 on the field at a time. It has the Rest ability, produce 2 wills in any combination of wind and or darkness. Spend this only to play God's Arts, Mage Arts, cards from a graveyard, or activate abilities of cards in a graveyard. That's very, very interesting. To play cards from a graveyard is a really important one, so we can use this to play cards with Remnant, or we can use this to play Sigurd, who we'll talk about a little bit later. It also has another ability of remove 3 cards in your graveyard from the game. Put this card from your graveyard into your hand. I only have 2 copies of Deathscythe because I opened up 7 boxes and only got 2 Deathscythes, but if you have 4, you need to run 4. I've been proxying 2 in my gameplay testing, but yeah, you should definitely run 4 Deathscythes. It's a must. And of course we have Mikage Reiya. I already talked about this card at the beginning of the video. We are running a full playset of her because she is incredibly fantastic. One of the best cards in the deck. 400 for a darkness with quick cast. Why does she have quick cast and flying? She's a vampire. Enter, search your deck for a darkness card, just any card, and put it into your graveyard, then shuffle your deck. Vampires you control gain Drain, so she also has Drain. And whenever this card is banished as an additional cost of a Mage Art or by an effect of a Mage Art, put this from your graveyard into your hand. So this card lets you get a tutor for a card, put it into your bin, well, a darkness card, but every card we have in the deck is a darkness card. So any card, put it into the bin. And then if we banish her by using a mage art effect, she comes back to our hand, and you know that we got some little combos there, so keep that in mind. But she's a really, really good way to get reanimation targets into the bin. And then if we banish her with the effect of some of the other cards, she just comes right on back. Amazing card. Next up, we have an equally amazing card, Rika, the Virtuous Vampire. This card is really good. 600 for a wind and a darkness, 5 heroes vampire with flying and barrier. Why does she have barrier? She says, discard a wind card. Target resonator gets +400/+400 until end of turn. Discard a darkness card. Target resonator gets -400/-400 until end of turn. And if you discard a card that's both wind and darkness, you can do both of them. She also says if you control a 5 heroes card not named Rika, the Virtuous Vampire, she costs less to play. You know, we are not running any other 5 heroes. She's the only one in the deck, but we are running a full playset. Being able to discard cards from her hand is actually really, really good, and her costing 2 is also really, really good. And she also has flying and barrier, and she's also a vampire, so she synergizes with Rezzard. She's just really, really good in general. Probably one of the best cards in the whole set. Just a really, really good, powerful 2-drop. Next up, we have Sigurd, the Covenant King. He's an 800 king zombie for a darkness and a wind. Play this card only from your graveyard, which means you cannot play him from your hand. You play him from your graveyard by paying his cost. He also says, zombies you control gain Bane, and enter, search your deck for a darkness edition with total cost 2 or less and put it into the field, then shuffle your deck. He's a very interesting card. He's very good to recur. You know, he's a very good card to banish using card effects because you can immediately just play him for the 2 costs. You don't have to, you know, do other effects to play him. He also gives all your zombies Bane, which is not that great. I mean, he gives himself Bane, which is good, but it's also good in one other situation. And that situation is the single edition we are running in the deck, and that is Necromancy of the Undead Lord. I actually think this is pretty good, like low-key underrated for Rezzard Deck. So what Necromancy of the Undead Lord is, it's just a single darkness. It's an addition. When it comes into play, you attach it to a resonator. The added resonator gains +200/+200 and is a zombie in addition to its other races. And whenever a resonator enters the field under your control, you may add this from your graveyard to that resonator. So this card has a lot of like tricky maneuvers with the deck. So first of all, with Sigurd, when you play Sigurd, you get to search your deck for this card and put it into the field. What that means is you can actually give another resonator +200/+200 and Bane, because Sigurd gives all zombies Bane, and this card turns the attached resonator into a zombie. So you can give another one of your cards Bane, which is pretty good. Also, you can use the Necromancy of the Undead Lord with Rika. You can pitch it using her ability to discard a darkness card from your hand to give a resonator -400/-400. And then later, when you play another resonator, this will just come back from the graveyard into the field, so it doesn't get completely wasted. So it does have some combo shenanigans with Rika. It does have some good combo shenanigans with Sigurd. I think this card is just straight up better than that Niflheim card that pumps up all your zombies, because you know what? This is the only zombie that we have, and it gives it just +200/+200. So why would you just want to give Sigurd only +200/+200, where we can give any one of our resonators +200/+200 and Bane and combo well with Rika? So yeah, I think this card is actually low-key underrated. Pretty good for the deck. Next up is one of my favorite arts from Alice Origin 3. This is Priestess of the Black City. She's a 600/1000, so she's got a big booty for 2 of any and a darkness. She's a human. You may pay 1 less to play this card for each stranger resonator in your graveyard. So she costs a single if there are 2 resonators, strangers, in your graveyard. So if you've played at least 1 Deathscythe and milled 2 of your resonator strangers from the stranger deck into the graveyard, she only costs 1, which is pretty good. You only need to play 1 Deathscythe in order to play her for 1. She says, enter until end of turn. You may play target stranger resonator from your graveyard. Really good. So say you have 2 in your graveyard. One of them is Shade. For 3 will, you can play her and target the Shade and then play the Shade. That's not too bad for 3 will. So yeah, I think she's pretty good. Not the best, so we're only running 2 of her. We don't want a lot of these stuck in our hand. Next up, we have some real power, or at least a part of true power. This is a Chant Mage Art for a darkness and a win with Remnant, which means you can play it from your graveyard, but when you play it from your graveyard, it gets removed from the game. As an additional cost to play this card, banish a resonator. Put target darkness resonator from your graveyard into the field. That darkness part is actually very important, which means we cannot play with any of the really, really powerful other colored cards. We can't play with Ouroboros or, that Kusanagi Motoko card just has to be a Darkness Resonator, but this card is super, super good. We are running a full playset of a part of True Power. Once again, it is a mage art, so if you banish Mikage Reiya as a part of this effect, she just comes right back to your hand. And there's other cards you could banish too. You can banish your Shade, to trigger his death effect. A lot of other cards like that. You can banish Sigurd and just play him again from your graveyard because he only gets to get played from your graveyard. Yeah, this card really synergizes with the whole deck, and it's the best reanimation spell we got. Speaking of reanimation spells, we have March of the Dead. This is one of the only non-Alice Origin cluster cards, but it is a common from Strangers of New Valhalla. The foil version is actually kind of expensive, but the regular one is not at all. So it's a chant for 1 darkness. Put target resonator with total cost 2 or less from your graveyard into the field. Put up to 1 second resonator with total cost 2 or less from your graveyard into the field if this card was awakened. I'm running 3 of these. There's not a ton of targets to hit with this. It's just, Reiya, Rika. Sigurd is kind of pointless because you can play it from your graveyard anyway, but all of the really, really good strangers that cost 2 or less are valid targets. So for example, you could choose Shade, which is a fantastic target, or you could choose Laurier, which is even better target. These really, really make this card worth running in the deck. In addition to being able to resurrect our Rika or one of our Reyya'S if she's just lying in the graveyard. I think this card is definitely worth running, maybe only 2, but I'm running 3 because I want to maximize on our reanimation potentiality. And speaking of reanimation potentiality, we have Mikage Seijiro's Game of Dreams. This is one of our finishers, in my opinion. It's a chant mage art for double wind, double darkness. Each player puts all resonators from their graveyard into the field. Then each player banishes all resonators not put into the field this way. So basically, you change all the stuff in your graveyard for all the stuff in your field. Your opponent does the same. So if you have a really big graveyard and nothing on the field, then you just get to reanimate a ton of stuff. So imagine just putting a bunch of your strangers from your graveyard that you put into play using the Deathscythe and Rezzard's ability all into the graveyard and just reanimating them all at the same time. This card is super, super good, but it can kind of just get stuck in your hand if you're not late game and you don't have a good setup for it, and it does cost 4. So I'm only running 2 of these. We'll talk about potentially running more of these at the end of the video too. And speaking of Mechagha, we have Mikage Seijiro himself, a 1200 vampire for triple darkness, a single wind. He has flying and precision, and he says, whenever a resonator dealt damage by this card is put into the graveyard, put it into the field under your control, it gains darkness in addition to its other types and becomes a vampire in addition to its other races. You can remove a stranger resonator in your graveyard from the game to give this eternal, which is, it's not too bad. So you can protect him if you need to. And he says, enter, you may pay any amount of life. This card deals that much damage to target resonator your opponent controls. So when you play him, you can pay some life and then kill one of your opponent's resonators, and then his first ability will trigger, and then you just get it. It's a pretty good card, but we don't want to be spending too much life because this isn't the most aggressive deck, and if your opponent's playing a really aggressive strategy, you really want to be careful with your life. So we're running 2 Mikages. He's really good to reanimate too, because he does cost 4, but I think he's definitely good and definitely worth running. And also, he is a vampire for our Rezzard's ability. In fact, if we use Rezzard's God Art with Mechagha on the field and he kills one of our opponent's resonators, we will also get it, which is pretty good. Next up is a true classic, Griffin Racing Across Darkness. This is a 6-drop 4 of any darkness wind, 1200 with flying. It is a chimera, and it simply says, enter, put the top 2 cards of your Magic Stone deck into the field. And then you can just immediately use them too, because they're not rested. I'm running 2 Griffin. It's a really, really good reanimation target, really beefy flyer. It's also a really good card to banish and get back with other effects, because we can keep triggering that, get 2 Magic Stones multiple times. We are running 2 because we don't want them stuck in our hand, and we also have some other reanimation targets too. Next up is another one of the Valhalla cards I am running in this deck. This is Athenaeus, Sealed God of the Ruins. She's not a very expensive card to purchase. She's kind of an expensive card to play. She's a 5-drop. 3 of any double darkness, 1200, 1000 human, and she has a really good enter ability and a really good death ability. So enter, your opponent banishes a resonator. If they don't, they banish a magic stone, which is really sweet. And she also says, when this card is put into a graveyard from the field, your opponent banishes a non-J ruler entity. So they have to banish basically any one of their stones or resonators or additions. Really, really good. She's kind of like a souped up Shade, but she's not a stranger, and she has really good attacks as well. And she has an on-activate ability, so you can rest her, and Resonators your opponent's control gain -200 until end of turn. If there are 4 or more runes revealed in your rune era, blah, 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 it gains -400 instead. We are not running any runes because this is not a rune deck, so, you know, we can rest her to give our opponent's Resonators -200, and she has those really good enter effects. I'm running 2 of her because she is a really, really good reanimation target, and she has fabulous artwork. And finally, we have our removal package, starting off with Moan of the Dead. This card is amazing. It is a 1-drop darkness chant mage art with quick cast. You may banish a darkness resonator rather than pay the cost for this card, which is pretty good. So we can banish our shade if we need to. We can banish Mikage Reiya if we need to, and she'll just come back to our hand. We can even banish Athenaeus if we need to. And then it says, destroy target resonator if its total cost is less than the number of cards in your graveyard. Choose a card from your stranger deck at random and put it into your graveyard. Really, really good. And we're going to have a lot of stuff in our graveyard, so, you know, it's basically going to be able to kill almost anything, and most players are playing with, you know, total cost 2 resonators or less, so just having 2 cards in our graveyard can almost hit anything, or having 3 cards in our graveyard can almost hit anything, and being able to put resonators, strangers, from our stranger deck into the graveyard is also fantastic. We, of course, are running a full playset of Moan of the Dead. And then finally, we have Life Severing Blade. This is kind of an expensive card, and if you don't have copies of this, definitely you don't have to run this. You can choose any other efficient removal card that you have, but I really like Life Severing Blade for some obvious reasons. The card is really good. It is a 3-drop, 2 of any, and a darkness chant quick cast. It is not a mage art, so keep that in mind. You cannot, you know, use Deathscythe to play this, but it says, if a resonator you control was put into a graveyard from the field this turn, you may pay 2 less to play this card. And we're going to be banishing a lot of resonators, so there's a good chance it's going to cost 2 less. And it simply just says, destroy target resonator. I'm running a full playset of this card because I think it is fantastic. But if you do not have it, and you probably don't, then choose any other efficient removal that you have, maybe even like End of Friendship or something like that. But, you know, this card, like I said, is expensive by itself, but it's from New Dawn Rises, and those booster boxes only cost like 50 bucks. So if you bought some New Dawn Rises and you ended up getting some Life Severing Blades, you could always run it. And before we end the video, I do want to talk about some other options you have in regards to this deck. So if you wanted to play a more control-y style build, you can run some counter magic like REIYA'S Journey. It's a pretty good counter card. You can also run something like Don't Cheat. I think it works really well. I'm not going to go over all of these cards individually because it would take a while, but I think Don't Cheat is pretty good, at least in the sideboard. You can also run the Awakening of the Undead Lord. I think this card is pretty good, but it's not good enough for this deck. Maybe if you don't have the Life Severing Blades and you have these, you can swap the Life Severing Blades for the Awakening of the Undead Lord. I also like Arthur in this build. I think he's pretty good against certain types of decks, but not all of them. He pumps up our whole team because we only have darkness cards, and he will give your opponent's team, as long as they are not darkness cards, -200. Not too bad. Knight of Sigurd is pretty good if we want to, you know, put more cards into our graveyard. But if you don't really need that and you already have a good synergy going on and already good ways to put cards into your graveyard, then it's not the best card. It could be a really bad late game dead draw. You can also add more Sigurds, more Mechages, as well as more of the Mechage Seijiro's Game of Death. I think this is a really good card if you want to go long game into a more controlling style build with, like, you know, the counter magic, you know, countering all of your opponent's chance and then killing all the resonators while setting up a really big graveyard play. You can do that and add more of these into the deck. And then these are just some extra stones I had in the pile. So that was my Alice Origin 3 Rezzard deck. I think this deck is actually really, really sweet. A lot of fun, and it's definitely my jam. Has some of my favorite cards of Alice Origin 3, and, you know, it's just a blast to play. I love reanimation style strategies. Let me know if your build differs in the comments down below. I'm sure you have a different build. This is just my personal build. And if you liked the video, maybe consider leaving a like, subscribing, you know, ringing that notification bell, all that good stuff. I definitely have more Forceful content in the pipelines. August is going to be crazy with Alice Origin 4. So stay tuned for that. And thank you very much for watching. See you later.